I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
Marriage is the best. Just coming off of one of our 1,000 conflicts. It was a good one. It was a spicy one. You know, marriage is a mess sometimes, and there are so many hard moments. It's very difficult. It's difficult to move through. It's difficult to manage. It's difficult because two people having different feelings and different thoughts and different experiences, different expectations and perspective. Two people who are pouring out most of what they have each day and then asking each other for connection and encouragement and love and affection and physical touch and energy and fun. Physical affection and energy and fun, and even sometimes conversations take even more out of our day-to-day cups. And it's hard to give that up. You know, it's just hard to continue to pour out when you're feeling empty or tired or, you know, whatever, fill in the blank, whatever's there. But sometimes you just got to roll up your sleeves and recommit and re-engage and analyze the feedback that you're getting and try again. So tomorrow we'll try again. You know, even though we may have failed each other today, tomorrow's a new day, and we're gonna give it the best. Give it the best that we can. Now we're gonna be talking about date night tonight, late night tonight, date night tonight. And I actually wish I was on a date with my wife instead of recording a podcast about dating my wife. So if there's irony in there, we should iron that out. Ouch. I think that comes from being a dad. I think that those things didn't just flow out of me as much when I was not a father, but now that I am, they definitely come. We've got some black coffee going tonight because it is very late, and the recent conflict that Beck and I had, well, it went late, which usually it does. I mean, who has time to, you know, talk these things through during the day? Marriage is the best. Without Becca, without our conflict, without our kids, without our home, without this huge life that we have ventured to tackle, I think I would just be much less of a person. Not in the sense that if you don't have a spouse or kids or a house to take care of, that you're less of a person. I'm more speaking about me and how I see in myself a propensity to shrink back from responsibility, to shrink back from, you know, the dishes, taking care of things. And it's not that I do take care of things a lot. I'm incredibly absent-minded, and a lot of things go unnoticed or undone, even if they are unnoticed. But Becca really does push me to be better, to be more engaged, to be a better dad, to be a better husband, to make better choices, to have better conflict, to take care of the girls better. My wife, today's Mother's Day, in fact, great day for conflict. And my mom paid my wife a wonderful compliment today, the mother of my 5 children. She said that she was one of the best moms that she had ever run into. And if that's not the sweetest compliment that your mother could give your wife, I don't really know what would be. So I'm very proud. Very proud of my wife. And my mom is a really incredible and wonderful woman as well. Happy Mother's Day. If you haven't heard, now you have. So dating is incredibly important in the marital context. It is one of the things that provides the fuel for the relationship over time, where stress and pressure and responsibilities and difficulties take and take and take and take. Dating pours back in. And so, by the very nature of the world and relationships, you cannot have something that is only taking and never pouring back in survive. It doesn't work. There is not enough stuff going in if the system doesn't allow for recharging. So life is constantly taking from us as individuals, as people, taking in the form of job stress, taking in the form of parenting stress, taking in the form of, going on Twitter and getting all stressed out about silly things that people are saying, going on, the news anywhere and finding out about the next awful thing that's going on. Life is always just taking from us. And not to say that there aren't really wonderful, really great parts of life as well. But there's a cycle of taking, especially when you're kind of expanding your responsibilities and kind of growing in your, if you're taking on more and more responsibilities as you get older. And so dating kind of serves as a recharge for what life is going to inevitably take from you. And if you don't date, if you don't allow for the recharge, then life eventually, and the world and stress and responsibilities, and just by the nature of what marriage is going to fade away and become damaged, become ruined, become overwhelmed by life. So if you are overwhelmed by life and life has taken so much from you at this point, wherever that may be coming from, dating is an incredible way of recharging, of re-engaging, of reintroducing fun and connection into a system that is otherwise headed toward failure. And by failure, I don't necessarily mean catastrophic failure, like the marriage is gone or done or somebody is getting a divorce. I more mean a sense of disconnect in your relationship that lasts a very long time or creates bitterness and resentment, which we've talked about before, which creates cracks in the foundation of the relationship. So once bitterness and resentment get their claws into the relationship and start messing with the foundation, you got a problem. Talk to any builder, you'll know that cracks in the foundation are a costly repair. So it's better to maintain the household, better to maintain the foundation, better to continue to invest and make sure that it's not fading or deteriorating to the point of needing, big repairs. And dating is one incredible way of rebuilding your connection with your spouse so that that connection can be sustained over time. Whereas life and responsibilities and stress are going to be taken from you, dating kind of fills up some of that cup. It is a lifeblood. It is a beautiful, reinvigorating thing, like a drop of water in the desert. A date can reinvigorate and reconnect you in a really profound and meaningful way. So if you're finding yourself very much disconnected, it probably is it's probably the time to set aside the time to go out and have a date. I actually want you to think back of a time when you were feeling really disconnected from your spouse and had the pleasure of, or the demand of your spouse to go out and to set aside the time and to prioritize it. Now, maybe you've never been in that position, but Becca and I have definitely been in a position when we were so exhausted and tired and life had taken so much from us, and we went out on our date and were filled back up. Actually, it's happened because we've been on very, very, very many dates. It's happened quite a few times. I would even say a lot of different times. So the world and your lives and the stress of life is an enemy to your marriage. And if you aren't going on offense, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, and pursuing your spouse, then, and your defense is lacking, right? The opponent is going to eat your lunch. I don't know. You're going to lose the game. Analogies are not my strong suit. But it's true. And so dating becomes incredibly important because of its reinvigorating, rejuvenating properties. Going back to the Daily Spark and some of the initial conversations surrounding sustainable systems that we've had on the pod, dating is therefore one of the most instrumental parts of creating a sustainable system in your marriage. The daily habit of just spending 20 minutes updating in conversation is a wonderful way to keep your love maps alive, to continue to update your knowledge and understanding of your spouse, know where they're at, know where they're going, know who's in their life, kind of more logistical things. Those 20 minutes or 90 minutes a week really does help a lot to sustain a marriage over time. Sustainable system number 2, the date night, is the weekly rhythm. And it's an incredibly important rhythm because it doesn't necessarily serve as an update of the love map, the everyday life, that function. However, the date night is actually more focused on fun. Having fun in your relationship is an incredibly important skill. And I would call it a skill because you can learn to have fun in your relationship. You can learn to date your spouse. You can learn to pursue them and play with them. And you can also deteriorate that skill by not practicing. So your ability to date and to have fun and to create enjoyment and to play with each other, it does wax and wane in different seasons, different stress levels, and with less or more practice, it will, wax or wane. Hopefully I got those right in the timing, the waxing and the waning and the more and the less, but I think you get it. So pursuing your spouse for a date night, creating that enjoyment, creating that play, is another part of investing in a marriage that sustains it over time. I think because life can be so stressful, overwhelming, difficult, it's hard to think about our marriages as places to play. At least in my experience of marriage and in my lack of ability to play and be any good at that, I feel as though when people in culture, especially when people in kind of the upcoming generation think about marriage, they're not necessarily thinking about playing. They're not necessarily thinking about playing and enjoyment and fun. Marriage has gotten this rap that is so negative. Like it's this awful bad prison. Like marriage is like some sort of prison that you voluntarily enter and lock yourself into. I think a lot of people think of it as a sexual prison where, you're like locking yourself down for life and into this one person. I think that some of the messaging around marriage has become one of liberty, right? Singleness versus the gulags marriage. And I actually don't think, I don't think that could be further from the reality of what marriage actually brings. When invested in correctly and prioritized correctly, and when given the right amount of light and soil and food and water, can grow to become the best thing, the best relationship, the best thing that you have in your life. Having fun and learning to have fun with Becca has been the most exciting and difficult adventure of my life. And sure, my whole world can't center around myself and my desires and, how much Rocket League I would like to be playing. But that's okay, because a lot of myself is selfish. A lot of my desires are maybe misplaced or wrong. A lot of my Rocket League is infuriating because it's hard and I'm not that good at it. But Becca challenges me in the ways that I need to be challenged because she's very different from me, and she brings tools and skills and beauty and friendship and fun and enjoyment and family that I would never ever have access to without her in my life. And losing sight of that is fairly easy in the stress of life when we're not prioritizing enjoyment and dating and fun and connection. So dating serves as that lifeblood. It serves as that revitalization. It's one of the very, very necessary ingredients in sustaining your a marriage relationship over time, or really any relationship. If I don't spend any time with my friends over time or pursue them, through conversation here and there, those relationships fade too. If you don't pursue your children and spend quality time with them, one-on-one here and there, those relationships fade as well. So really, this principle applies to most relationships, but it mostly applies to marriage, because marriage is the most intense and poignant relationship we have access to in our life. So things that are true outside of marriage about relationships can apply to marriage. They're all the more because of the nature of marriage, because of the deep and intense nature of the marital relationship. All right, so I think I've overemphasized the importance of dating and the usefulness of dating. Let's talk a little bit about what dating is, because I think one thing that trips couples up, and this is more from practice, is that the dating, there's this black box that's placed around dating, or like expectations. There we go. There are these expectations surrounding dating and what is a date and what's not a date that couples get tripped up on, and it kind of stops them from doing the work to prioritize date night, even though it's so important and so life-giving, and it would bless them. It's something that falls off the priority list. It's kind of first to go if there's a lack of time or space or energy in the relationship or in the schedule. Date night is something that almost is treated as expendable and not necessary, even though most of the couples that I talk to would say that they acknowledge that dating is really important and that they should be prioritizing it and engaging in it. So there's a funny disconnect between our knowledge and understanding that dating is really important in our relationship, in our marriages, and the fact that we are not making the time for it. It's so easy to not make time for it. It's so simple to put it on the back burner, or to put it off, or to allow any number of factors to negatively impact your ability to do it. Because dating can be difficult. Dating can be really hard. It doesn't come without sacrifice. Yeah, that's it. Dating is difficult. Prioritizing a marriage is difficult. Sustaining your relationship is difficult. And dating is one of the things that I think all of us can acknowledge. We've heard and we know, and we, all the books and all the gurus and all the TikToks and everybody knows and acknowledges and talks about how important dating is. But it's kind of like working out. We can all acknowledge and understand that working out is really good for us. We can all say that we should be working out. We can all, read up on all the benefits and the longevity and the rejuvenation of our bodies and muscles and brains and chemicals and minds and all that good stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we do it, because working out is a sacrifice. Dating is the same. Dating is a sacrifice, but it actually costs you less than working out. Badum-ch. Do I have a badum-chum? I guess that works. I don't have a badum-ch. Okay. Badum-ch. I guess I do have one now. So yeah, dating is the same thing. Dating operates under the same principle. Dating is a sacrifice that you make in your time, energy, finances, and schedule in order to sustain the marital system. But just like working out, it can fall off really quick, and it can be really difficult to prioritize. Dating does not have to mean leaving the house. It doesn't have to mean going to a restaurant. It doesn't have to mean going to a movie. It doesn't have to mean big, grand gestures. It doesn't have to mean getting dressed up. It doesn't have to mean any of those things. If there are barriers in your mind, if there are barriers in your schedule and in your time and your energy, removing those barriers, systematically is going to be important for you to re-engage in the practice of dating your spouse. So if finances, are a stress in your relationship, going out and adding more stress by taking on more financial burden is probably not going to be a good deal. But dating is so important for the sustaining of your marriage that finding ways to be intentional and do really cheap dates during this season is going to be your way to go. If childcare is a huge issue in your relationship and it's posing a huge, this big roadblock for getting out and spending quality time together, then I think that maybe it's, you can start with a season where you do a lot of dates at home, whether that means setting a fire, not in the house, hopefully, but like out in the backyard, whether it means setting up a picnic, whether it means lighting candles, whether it means doing something different in your space, reorganizing, whatever it might be, as long as you are close to one another, as long as you are communicating with one another, as long as all of the distractions of your life and the stress of your life is set aside for a little while, you are going to be investing in your marriage in a meaningful way. Dating is all about togetherness and fun. If your biggest if your biggest barrier to dating is your schedule, your time, that is probably one of the most common and most difficult barriers to overcome. Because if you don't have time for your spouse, if you don't have time in your schedule to prioritize your marriage, you're going to probably have to sacrifice even more to get started and to start dating each other than if it was, more of a money thing, or more of a childcare thing, or more of a something else, fill in the blank, whatever it might be. If there's not enough time in the schedule, that means that something in the schedule has to change, has to go, has to be sacrificed, has to be altered in order to fit dating back in. Even if you're just going to stay at home, time is limited, and we can't create more time. But in essence, you must create time for your marriage if you want it to survive, if you want it to be sustainable. Any amount of time that you put into carving out the time for your date is going to pay you back in huge dividends throughout the rest of your life. Because investing in your marriage isn't an investment in today, although enjoying a spouse, enjoying time enjoying connection, having fun, being playful with your spouse is an enjoyable payoff today. But it's also an incredible payoff, and the real payoff actually pays off 6 months from now. So time can be a very major barrier for people because it requires sacrifice. It requires cutting something out of your schedule in order to set aside time for connection and play and enjoyment and fun with your spouse. It will always be worth it to continue to invest in your marriage long term. So carve out the time, put the time in to take the time out of your schedule, to put the time in for dating and connecting with your spouse in order to continue to invest and reinvigorate and reconnect in your marriage. And it will pay you back. It'll pay you back later. It'll pay you back in connection. It'll pay you back in affection. It'll pay you back in sensuality. It'll pay you back in feeling more full. It'll pay you back in decreased stress relief and all of the other wonderful benefits that married people assume. So whether you're dealing with, financial stress or kid stress, whether you're dealing with time stress or another stress, another barrier, finding ways to get around those barriers so that you and your spouse can carve out this time is going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it to carve that time out, and it's going to be worth it for you and your spouse to continue to invest in and sustain your marriage. So dating can really look however you need it to look in your current season, as long as the emphasis is we are together and we are attempting to enjoy and have fun and be engaged with one another. Very limited to no distractions, and an emphasis on a focus and emphasis on the other person. Becca and I have had an incredibly vast experience within our relationship and dating. Early dating, middle dating, later dating. We've gone on tons and tons and tons and tons of dates, countless at this point dates. Our most recent date, we went to Chipotle, I believe, and Dollar Tree. And then we came home and probably watched one of our shows, Murder, She Wrote, I think. Becca and I share a love of sharing food, so just eating together anywhere that we can find that Becca will enjoy the food and conversation. Our fun has always kind of been built around sharing information and doing, poking fun at each other, laughing, being sarcastic with one another, sharing funny stories, funny memes, discussing our values, discussing our future, discussing life, kids, finances. Just sharing lots and lots and lots about life. One of our very, very favorite things to do together is just to sit, to eat, and to chat. It doesn't have to, we don't need much more than that. And if it's a restaurant that doesn't have any TVs in it, it's all the better, because we're able to, again, minimize the distractions and focus on the togetherness and just the verbal fun of playing with one another by sharing ideas and by engaging in some of that. So that's something that we've done really well for pretty much all of our marriage, and actually done well for the 3 years that we knew each other prior to being married. Now, dates don't always go right. So just because you're dating doesn't necessarily mean that a date is going to go really well. So what happens if a date goes really poorly? That is a really great question, and let's answer it. So when you are committed to the principle of dating regularly, weekly or biweekly, then if you have a bad date, then you always get to look forward to the next date. There will always be a chance to kind of redeem, reconnect, reinvigorate, even if this specific time, this specific scenario didn't help you guys and you weren't really feeling connected. You are going to get another shot at it because you're dedicated and prioritizing your dating. So the next date is going to roll around quickly, and you're going to be able to engage and re-engage and receive the benefit of the date. So Becca and I have been on lots of dates that have turned out really badly. They were either not what we needed, right? So Becca was looking for encouragement and connection, and I had something hard to bring up, or Becca was really looking forward to a certain thing, and they decided to discontinue that item 3 days before we arrived at the restaurant. I think that actually may have happened. There was actually this one time that Becca and I really wanted to eat chicken parmesan at Buca di Beppo, which is like this Italian restaurant, and we're up in the Midwest, and so it's a thing. I don't know if it's everywhere, but it's here. So we found one that was semi-local. It was still 20 minutes from where we were living at the time. And we had scheduled, all right, we're going to go there on this next date night that we had. We were doing Thursday night date nights at this time. So the day of our date, our sitter, probably a family member at this point, came over, relieved us. We left. We were very much looking forward to chicken parmesan at this specific restaurant. And we're having a little bit of trouble finding it, but we quickly remedied that. It's like there was like a turning thing, or like it wasn't where it was supposed to be, but then we saw the sign. So yeah, so like we went to one spot, couldn't find it, looked around, saw the sign from where we were, where the GPS had taken us. And so we're driving around the corner, and it's, that experience where like there's nobody in the parking lot to this space that you're supposed to be going to. And so you're driving up kind of confused, kind of like, wait, did we make a mistake? What's going on? So we drive up to Buca di Beppo, and there's like this massive hole in it. There's like a hole in the restaurant. It's like gone. And we immediately go on our phones and look up Buca di Beppo, Burnsville, and it had burned down. The restaurant that we had planned on going to, like the one day that we actually have a plan for our date and we actually have a thing that we really, really want, that's the day. Like it had actually burned down like 3 days prior, or something similar to that. It was very, very recently to the point in time in which we were supposed to be there, and we were really looking forward to it. And this was like the only one that was reasonable driving distance. Like it burned down 3 days prior. So that's probably my favorite bad date story, because I look back on that and how ridiculous that was, and how everything had to go horribly wrong. And obviously those poor people who like lost the restaurant. We're talking about the date. I mean, come on. And so kind of solidified that sometimes our date nights actually were completely cursed. And because something would always go wrong. Something went wrong all the time. So much that our dates gained a reputation between the two of us that they were cursed. So I would say, don't be afraid to date poorly. Don't be afraid. If you're going to commit yourself to dating regularly, there's a lot less pressure surrounding like making dates the most of something. Like putting pressure on each other, putting pressure or expectations on maybe sex or sexuality, kind of around dating. It shouldn't be transactional. It should be, this is something that we're doing to prioritize our relationship, without attaching anything to it, because that does deter you from really benefiting from the date if you're putting all these like strings or expectations around it. So don't be afraid to date poorly. Don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to play. Don't be afraid to try something new, try something different, whether that be using some room in your house in a way that you've never used it before, whether that be playing a game you've never played before, trying something new, trying to see if, like continuing to explore and engage one another, both verbally and affectionately and in your interests and connections, to see what you can find there. It should be an open exploratory adventure between the two of you, and there's a huge benefit to that. So that's sustainable system number 2. Date nights are really important. Getting them in weekly is ideal, as much as you can, even if it is just staying at home and carving out an hour to be intentionally present together, eliminating all distractions, focusing in on one another, and creating time and space for a focused connection, and for a little bit of play and enjoyment in your relationship that will sustain itself over time. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip.
And I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
What a terrible sentence. That's quite a wide-ranging, sweeping statement. It will always be worth it. Becca and I have had an array, and Becca and I have had an incredible. I hate that. It's so low energy. Can we pick it up? Could we try that again and bump up the energy a bit? Marriage is the best.